I'm Laura Reckford, Executive Director of the Falmouth Art Center. We have a very special program for you today. This is a follow-up to our February virtual art reception, with which many of you attended. And that reception was devoted to one of our current exhibits, Our Stories, which features the work of Claudia Smith-Jacobs, Karl Lopes, Robin Miller, and Joe Diggs. And a big plug for that exhibit. You have 1 week more to see that exhibit. This is a very powerful, special exhibit. I encourage you to stop by. We're free and open to the public daily, and usually you will be the only one in the room. We are not crowded. The exhibit is amazing, and I hope you come by to see it if you're able to. We do have virtual exhibits about our shows monthly, and in the process of preparing for the February virtual exhibit, which we had a couple weeks ago, Claudia Smith-Jacobs started doing some research on the subject of Africans in European art. She discovered a lot of interesting work, and so we decided to have a part 2 reception, and that is what we are doing today. So everyone who was invited to the February reception, plus others, who heard about this special second reception, they have all been invited to this reception. There are some people who could not be here, but they wanted to be here, so we are recording it for them. And some Zoom tips, muting. If you could keep yourself on mute unless you have a question to ask. And if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat unless we're at a point where questions can be asked. And that muting is good because you might not realize you're not muted, and then we hear your dog barking and your phone ringing and that kind of stuff. So if you could keep yourself on mute, except if you have a question. We will have time for questions, but if you want to put them in the chat, that works well too. You can use the speaker view versus the gallery view while Claudia is speaking. And that way you can see her on the big screen. We will be sharing the screen, and so that automatically puts the big screen there. The gallery view, of course, is what we also call the Brady Bunch view or the Hollywood Squares view. It has everyone in an equal size box, and that's how you see who else is here. The agenda. So I'm going to introduce Claudia, and then she will explain more about the program. Then we'll play a PowerPoint that is set to music, and then we'll start the discussion that will include a number of shared screens where we'll talk about some of the pictures that are in the slideshow specifically, and have an opportunity to take a longer look at some of those pictures. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce Claudia. Multiculturalism has shaped both the art and the life of artist Claudia Smith-Jacobs. She is both multi-ethnic, Haitian American, Cherokee, French, and Scotch-Irish, and multilingual. She speaks English, French, and Portuguese, and has traveled extensively. Graduation from Boston University, a BA in political science, was followed by acceptance into the graduate program in African Studies at UCLA. Subsequently, she trained at Georgetown University for admission into the U.S. Peace Corps in Brazil. After 2 years in Brazil, she returned to the United States to complete a master's degree at Lesley University, followed by a certificate in Língua e Cultura Portuguesa at the Universidade dos Açores in Portugal. Claudia has studied art in France and in England, as well as at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, the Cambridge Adult Education Center, the Falmouth Artists Guild, the Cape Cod Art Association, and the Cotuit Center for the Arts, as well as the Provincetown Art Association and Museum. She is a juried artist member of the Cape Cod Art Association, as well as a member of the Fort Point Arts Community in Boston, the Provincetown Art Association and Museum, the Cotuit Center for the Arts, and the Falmouth Arts Center. Claudia has won numerous awards, including the Falmouth Cultural Council's Elaine Pere Cohen Award, the Romanos Rees Scholarship given by Provincetown Art Association and Museum, and she has been selected artist in residence by Les Amis de la Grande Vigne in France. She teaches here at the Falmouth Arts Center, and welcome, Claudia.
Thank you so much, Laura. Good to see everybody. It's great to see you on this cold, rainy day. And I want to say a huge thank you before I start to Laura and Ashley and Kathy for all of their technical expertise. Much appreciated. Couldn't have done it without you. So anyway, quite by chance, while working on the Our Stories exhibit, I came across photo after photo of people of African ancestry painted by European artists. For me, it was a wow moment. So I would like you to have that wow moment too. So the first thing we're going to do, as Laura said, is to show you a PowerPoint of about 36 paintings, and I won't say a word. And then after that, you can see a slideshow, one painting after another, of about 14 paintings. And there will be time in between. I will say something, you please interject, ask questions, add comments. I don't pretend to know everything at all. Some of you may have some information that I don't have that you would like to share with everybody. So we'll share the 16 paintings or 14, 16, and we can talk about them together. And then we'll have a big Q&A. So let's start with the PowerPoint. Just sit back, enjoy, and hopefully you will have your own wow moment.
Wow.
So just out of curiosity, raise your hand if you've seen all of those before.
None.
If not, you're with me. I was just blown away by all of those.
Yeah.
So, yes, Adele, hi. You're on mute.
Yeah, okay, now I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. There was a sadness because we know what's going to come in successive centuries. And I thought back to pre-pandemic when there was an art museum at Amherst College on various Black themes. And I gravitated to this painful photo of the equivalent of a slave in Queen Victoria's castle.
Mm-hmm.
And the contrast between the dignified, beautiful humanity to what would come later. It's devastating.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I experienced that sadness just watching what we just finished watching.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for saying that. Shall we go and look at the slideshow where we can look at 16 very slowly? And I want you all to feel free to comment. I will just, sort of talk briefly about each one. And then I hope if you have something to say, something to add, a question, a comment, you will do so. I'm so glad to see all of you today. Laura, are you all set?
Yep, so I'll start that up.
Oh, okay. This is a study for one of the many, many paintings of the Magi for the New Testament. And it was done a very long time ago. I'm going to pull up my notes as we do this. And frankly, it's a very old painting. Can anyone add anything about it? Does anyone want to say anything about it?
What is the background? Which city? Do you know?
Lilian, I'm sorry, please.
I was wondering, what is the city, the background that we see?
Well, let's guess that it's probably somewhere in Italy, but that's an interesting question, but it doesn't fit the story of the birth of Christ, does it?
No.
No, it does not. So I can only assume that the person who painted it borrowed a little bit from his or her own background.
Or it could be somewhere near Jerusalem or Nazareth, or yeah.
Okay. Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Good to see you, Lilian.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you for coming. Okay. Any other comments on that one?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Hello, Wei.
There were 3 gifts from the Magi. That's
Yes.
obviously not gold. So it's either frankincense or myrrh, I'm guessing frankincense. By that, can we tell which of the wise men it was, Gaspar and the other 2?
I cannot.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that comment. Any other comments on it? Okay. Shall we look at the next one?
Okay, I'm going to pull up the next.
Take your time.
Ooh.
This, if you will look down in the corner to the king with the crown, is Mansa Musa, the richest man in the world, even now. The man who was the emperor of the Empire of Mali. And Mali, of course, then was huge. It encompassed many different countries, the Gambia, Senegal. I could go on. And this particular map was requested by the King of France. Now, Mansa Musa was emperor in the 14th century. And this particular map is now in the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris. And it's called the Catalan Atlas.
Uh-huh. Strange.
Any comments or questions on this?
Do you know what
Deb.
language this is?
Good question. I would assume it's Latin.
Oh,
Now, I've not studied Latin.
no,
No,
I would think it's Arab.
yeah, me too.
All right.
And the wealth of the leader, where did that come from? Gold?
It came from gold.
Okay.
In all of the countries that made up Mali at that time, the Empire of Mali, there were many gold mines,
Mhm.
and the kings parlayed that, along with trade, into massive fortunes. It would be worth now in today's dollars somewhere between 400 and 500 billion dollars.
I need to think about this more to form a clear question, but I'm baffled why the focus seemed to be on the slave trade rather than ripping the nations of all their precious minerals. And that did happen, but the focus wasn't there as far as I know.
Well, in the time that we're looking at the Atlas, of course, that wasn't in question. But that's something that I've thought about too, because certainly when the European nations, say Spain, came to the New World, the focus was on taking the natural resources back. Which also brings up an interesting point, which I wasn't going to make today, but it is a key point that many of the explorers, they came in teams. So many of the explorers were actually of African origin. And also in that, the Columbus, the Santa Maria, what were the names of the three boats? Somebody yelled them out. The Pinta, the Santa Maria, and so forth. The pilot of the Santa Maria was actually an African. It's like, who knew?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Any more on this, or shall we go on to the next one?
Let me say,
Yes, Wayne.
looking at the text, I do quite a bit of painting with Arabic text. That is not Arabic. It's
No.
Roman alphabet, and it's reading from left to right.
Yeah, right. I just was going to say the same thing. Some of it might be French, some of it might be English, and I don't know, but it's.
I'm wondering about the little structures everywhere. Are those fortresses or are those mosques? Had Islam come to Mali at that time?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. I agree with Wayne and also with Lilian. That is not Arabic.
No,
And I'm looking at the accents that I can make out on it.
right.
And it just is not. And I see the word negro.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Aha.
And I see foi, F-O-I-S, so that's
Uh-huh.
French.
And I see something that looks like, could that be Arabia?
Yeah, and
Interesting. Well, the next time we could all get on a plane and go to Paris, we could look at it in close up rather than having to squint on the screen.
yeah.
Claudia, it may be possible, this is work for you and for the team, but to send out this to those of us who are here so we can enlarge it And not now, but I mean after the program, so we can enlarge it on our computer?
Maybe, or
Mhm.
that Adele, you're thinking correctly. Some of you could just pull it up on your computers.
I Googled it on my iPhone and got a very clear version of this.
And what did you find out?
Just more detail.
Uh-huh.
It was lighter, easier to look at.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So,
But if it's Catalan, isn't it Spanish?
Yes,
Well, that's right. It would be.
yes.
I love this because we're a team of detectives here. Somebody could also Google the question, what language was the
Yes.
Catalan Atlas written in?
Right.
And tell us while we're still here. You don't have to do it right this minute, but you could let us know at the end. I saw someone raise their hand. Any more on this aside from the language? Because the detective is going to find that out for us.
And just a reminder that there's so many different forms of Spanish, so it could
This
be
is
why we're
true.
struggling with this. Yeah. Yeah.
But it could be Catalan.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's
That
That would be a
one.
hint.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And that's close to French, Catalan,
Ah, very good.
Mm-hmm.
Southern French, yeah.
Excellent.
It
Any more on
says here-
this?
Yeah, I Googled Catalan Atlas
Yeah,
and it says it's in the Catalan language.
there we go.
Hmm.
There we go.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So thank you to everyone who helped with the detective work on this.
they spoke it in Catalonia.
Aha, okay. And
Mhm.
yet the atlas ended up in Paris. I wonder if the Catalans are a little annoyed about that because it is their atlas.
Hmm.
Okay. Laura, shall we look at the next one? Okay. Very important man here. You're going to hear the rattling of paper. I have my notes all over the place.
So,
So as you can see, his name is Ignacius Sancho.
Yep.
And he was born, believe it or not, on a slave ship.
Ah.
Can you imagine having to give birth on a slave ship?
no.
His mother died in the Spanish colony of New Granada, and his father committed suicide rather than live as a slave. He was taken to England at the age of 2 years old, approximately, and given to 3 sisters. And apparently the life there was so difficult, so awful, that he actually ran away. And he was taken into the household of the Duke of Montague, whom he had met purely by chance. And the family of the Duke took an interest in him, educated him, employed him in the household as a butler. And when the Duke died, Sancho inherited, hold your tables here, 30 pounds and 1 year's salary. So that's everything that I know about this. I don't know who painted it. Maybe somebody does. I don't know where the painting lives now. Any comments? Questions, insights?
How come
Credited
we
for being
don't
the
find
first
any
person?
music about him?
Well, you know,
I'm
that's an
sorry.
interesting question. We might have to look it up. But let's think about all the women composers whom we never hear about either. So
What is his name?
Ignacius Sancho.
Who
mm,
is Ignacius?
Ignacius Sancho.
I found this on the web.
So
What did you
Claudia,
find?
Who is Ignacius
Um,
Sancho?
someone had to think highly of him, or I know he had a bit of money in order to have a portrait done, given his background.
Yes.
So you wonder if it's from the house of the the Marquis or wherever he was raised or taken into.
Mhm.
But, someone had to commission the work, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say.
True.
Why don't we know about these history things? So sad, a white history in Western world. It's terrible.
Well, you know what? Here is you and I know how it works. Top dog writes the narrative,
Yeah.
which means
Claudia?
that you leave out, people of color, people of different nationalities, and also women.
Yeah.
So there is certainly a lot of history, which is why it was so exciting for me to find what I'm sharing with you
Exactly.
today.
I found something about him.
What did you find, Terry?
Find my glasses. Actually, the picture's here, and Charles Ignacius Sancho, was a British abolitionist,
Mm-hmm.
writer, composer, one on the slave ship, and all that. Charles Ignacius. That's about all I got. But
Okay, that's good. You added something to it.
Well, yeah.
On mine, it says he was the first Black man to vote in a British election.
Okay, I didn't get that.
Wow.
There's
I
actually
found something on him.
quite a bit on him in Wikipedia.
And somebody else just spoke too. I heard it.
Charlotte, I have something on him also.
Hi, Charlotte. What did you find?
That he was an avid reader and pursued
Yeah.
a self-taught education, taking full advantage of the Montague House Library, as well as a stream of highly educated and cultured visitors. When Thomas Gainsborough visited to paint the portrait of Duchess of Montague, he also had Sancho sit for a portrait.
Maybe this is it.
Maybe this is it. And as well as appearing on the stage, Sancho was particularly productive as a composer. He published 4 collections of composition and a treatise entitled A Theory of Music.
Fascinating. And Wayne, this adds to it, right? We have heard none of this.
There's also another one here. Some of his minuets, cotillions, and country dances are at the British Library.
Ah,
Famous
in
one.
London.
Yep.
There's quite a bit of him on a Wikipedia page.
Hi, Allison.
Hi, Claudia.
What do you see?
It's too long to read, but it's really quite fascinating. He died from the effect of gout, 14 December 1780. Was buried in the churchyard of St. Margaret's in Westminster. So this is a long entry in Wikipedia about him. It's really worth looking at.
Excellent. Well, tells us that he is probably well known in England, if not here.
And actually,
thank you, Allison. And Terry?
You can go to YouTube and hear his music. No kidding.
Really?
Oh, wow.
How exciting.
Under the early dance circle. Then there's another one on YouTube, and there's another one. There are 3 things you can actually go to with videos of his music. So
excellent. Well, I know what we're going to do after we say goodbye. I'm writing it on my paper. YouTube, I'm headed there later today. Very good. Anything else on Mr. Sancho?
But there is a portrait of him as a young man, and he's very attractive. So that's in the Wikipedia page.
Does it have the name of the artist?
The artist, it's attributed to Alan Ramsey.
Thomas Gainsborough's.
It's attributed
in the National
called Portrait of an African, attributed to Alan Ramsey.
Okay, and the other one we thought might be Gainsborough.
There is one with Gainsborough in Canada, Ottawa, the National Gallery.
Okay.
There's a write-up on in the British Museum about him as well.
Library.
The British Library.
Excellent.
Each stage of his life.
Okay. So apparently he's famous, but just not to us.
Interestingly, there's just one sentence here that proves that his letters were published, and he became widely known as a man of letters.
Mhm. Okay.
The
Thank you.
British-
Thank you. Anything else, Terry?
The British Library has a whole lot of stuff.
Okay. All right. Very good. Good to hear. Okay, Laura, the next one. Good. We're a community of detectives here. Okay. This handsome young lad was painted by Louis Corregis, or maybe Louis Corregis. I'm not sure whether he was French or what, but it's called Auguste, and he was the servant of the Duchess of Chartres. And it's a watercolor and a gouache for we painters. And it's actually hanging in Chartres.
Oh,
And it's charming.
yes.
It's a tiny little paint.
About what year was that, Claudia?
At about 1770. Yeah. And he has on his leather boots. And a gorgeous Louis something chair.
Uh-huh.
Any comments on that one?
There's such a disconnect.
Tell me more.
The pictures we've looked at have been servants or have been slaves, and yet their garments are fine, and they themselves still hold themselves with pride. And I can't put it all together.
I hear you. Any other comments or questions or concerns or? Okay, Laura, let's look at the next one. I love this one.
Gorgeous.
Now, two of the ones that I'm showing you today were painted by women.
Really?
This is one of them. So this is called the Portrait of Madeleine, and it was painted by Marie Guillermine Benoit. And it showed in the Salon of 1800. It's an oil on canvas, and it's in the Louvre.
Wow. Would you repeat the name of the artist, please?
Marie Guillermine, that's Guillemine, Benoit. And it's she doesn't put the circumflex, so she hasn't dropped the S. So it's Benoist.
Okay.
Liliana, would she say, is it Benoist or Benoit?
I don't
What do you
know.
think?
I
don't either.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm used to the BENO with the circumflex, OI, circumflex T.
Yeah.
But she doesn't have the circumflex.
Right.
Yeah.
One could assume that since it was changed to a circumflex, therefore one did not hear the S.
That's what I think too.
Yeah, but she kept the S.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Je sais pas moi. Okay. But just gorgeous. I mean, look at the treatment of the drapery.
Right.
Look at the skin color. My sense is that she probably underpainted the figure in a rosy hue
Uh-huh.
and let it show through.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you actually seen this painting in your travels, Claudia?
I wish. No, I have not.
Okay.
I've been to the Louvre many times, but I have not. I mean, the place is so enormous. I have not seen that painting.
Mhm.
Right. Me too. I wouldn't remember.
Yeah. The next time I'll look for it.
Yeah.
Any comments on this one?
I just found an auto portrait of Madame Benoit.
Ah, what does she look like?
She's beautiful. I'm just trying to put that into the chat here. She's quite beautiful.
Did you Google it?
I did. Well,
Oh, okay, so we can Google it too then.
her husband's name was Benoit.
Yes, yes. Any more comments on this one, or we can go on to the next?
Here it comes. I'm gonna try.
Okay. Very good.
It sent you the link. No.
Thank you, Allison. This one, obviously from the Middle Ages, is called Black John Blank, B-A-B blank with an E at the end, the Trumpeter. And I know no more about it. I don't know what it's on. I don't know whether it's a tapestry. I have no idea. But it caught my eye and I wanted to share it with you all.
And does it not look as if it was painted over another painting?
Say that again a little louder.
It looks that it might have been painted over another painting.
It might have been. I mean, there's a lot of texture behind it, a lot going on in the background. Any other comments? Okay. Laura, can we see the next one? Oh, there's my great grandfather. Okay. So that's Toussaint Louverture. And it was done actually as, it's a very small little painting. And it's for the artists among us. It's a colored print. And it was done about 1790. And this also is in the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris. And of course, Toussaint was the general who drove the French out of Haiti, or Saint-Domingue as it was called back in the day.
Well, is this in the New World or the Caribbean? I'm looking at the structure in the bottom left. I don't recognize it.
Do you think you would?
I think it looks like the Mediterranean.
Well, no, it could actually be in the West Indies too.
Yeah. Could be.
Yeah.
I mean,
because you see the boats coming in.
Yeah.
Claudia, Cap-Haïtien was built not that much later than this, and those massive structures on the water. You know, the fortress.
Yeah.
Cap-Haïtien. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is definitely IT. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I have another question. I know that in different centuries, proportions are seen differently by artists. And here, Louverture looks so small. Is that because of the technique that was used? Or do you know if he really was a person of small stature?
I mean, I have no idea.
Mhm.
I have no idea. It's certainly a very stylized painting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I have
think,
Even the horse is out of proportion.
yeah, his head is definitely out of proportion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you stood him up beside that horse, he'd be tall enough.
Mm. It has sort of a folkloric quality to it, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What can you tell me about his background? And I'll tell you why I asked.
Well, why don't you tell me why you asked first?
Because I've read that that in civilian life, he was a hairdresser. That was how he had made his living.
I had never heard. You know something I had never heard. Where did you hear that?
Two articles I read, which that were on the something about jobs, but they had minor highlights on the side of what you don't expect to know about people. And one of them was in civilian life, he was a hairdresser or whatever the equivalent was in his time.
Now, when you say hairdresser, we're talking a barber?
I would guess so.
Oh, okay. All right. So I know that when we say
the article.
So what was the article? Do you remember?
No,
The source?
it's so long ago. It just stuck in my head that you don't know where a revolutionary will come from.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know that after we all say bye, I'm going to rush out and see if I can dig that up. That I had never heard.
And I'm sorry, I don't know your names.
He apparently was a professional soldier.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
That he definitely was.
Right, because
and the thing that interested me about Toussaint was that he fought in the American Revolution when he was a teenager.
He also fought within the French army for the French. He was a trained professional soldier who rose through the ranks there and became a general before he assumed his own generalship to lead the revolution in Haiti. And I think a lot of the stylization we're looking at and the relationship of the figure to the horse is because it's during the time of Napoleon, who was definitely a tiny person and would be shown in these same proportions. And that could have, I have no idea how big Toussaint was, none, but it could have been affected by his being in the Napoleonic time. And it's not, he may have had that kind of a uniform, but then again, he may not have.
That's interesting, Charlotte, that whole philosophy where you cannot be portrayed as larger than whoever's in charge. However, in a few minutes, we're going to see another military person who also participated in this whole scenario, who was obviously quite tall. But thanks for those comments. Anything else? All right, next, let's see the next one. Well, voila, there we are. Okay, so this is Jean-Baptiste Bailly. And he was the deputy from Haiti, from Saint-Domingue, right? This particular painting was also painted by a woman. Anne-Louis Giraudet Triosson. It's an oil on canvas, and it's at the Musée National du Château de Versailles. It's approximately mid-18th. Now, Bailly's story is fascinating to me. He was sold into slavery as a boy. He bought his freedom in 1764. He fought in the American War for Independence. He served as a captain in the Haitian army during the Haitian Revolution. He was born in Senegal. And he was also a leader in the French Revolution, and in fact was a member of what they called the Council of 500, which is equivalent to our legislature, the House of Representatives. Now, he was part of the army that went to fight against, he went to Haiti to fight against the independence revolution.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting? But when he got there, he switched sides. And he ended up fighting to kick the French out. So this is Jean-Baptiste Bailly.
The other thing that's great about this picture, the color scheme. It's really a very unusual color scheme. The yellow and the black predominant with a tiny touch of rose.
Right.
It's just a great color scheme.
Absolutely. And then a repetition of the pink and the yellow way down in the corner.
Yeah.
And also on the other side. So there we go. So we go from a small little portrait of Toussaint to a very large one of Bailly.
You know, Claudia, I mean, I'm thinking back to what so-called education taught us and our children.
Yes.
And did not include these elegant, statuesque, powerful people with agency. That's not what we saw when we were growing up. And unfortunately, our kids probably didn't see it either.
Which is why I delight in sharing this with you today. Yeah. Any more comments on?
It's just
Claudia, is there any significance to the stylization around his waist of the wrap, the sash?
That's an interesting point, and I do not know.
I wouldn't be surprised if the artist was somewhat infatuated by the way she painted his genitalia.
That could be. That could be. He stands proud.
No doubt. A man amongst men, obviously.
Yeah. Hi, Joe. Good to see you.
You as well.
Thank you.
We know that even in all drawing classes, when someone's kind of caught into whatever, they tend to pay more attention to it. So that was my reason why actually saying that, not being crass, but
no.
It wouldn't be surprising to me at all if they were, she had some kind of lust for him or something, because that's seems a little over the top for somebody who's so accomplished as an artist.
Well, speaking of artists, what I find interesting about this too is, we're looking at 18th century here, and this is a woman painter, right? Now, if you go to the next century, where women in art classes weren't even allowed in, they could only paint mothers and children. They couldn't go in. This is in France I'm speaking of. They couldn't go in and they couldn't paint the nude gentleman who's standing there. Weren't allowed in. So this is very forward thinking of her. The other thing, that's on my mind too, someone just asked about the significance of the colors around his waist. If you look at the primary version of those colors, it's red, white, and blue.
Yep.
I wonder if she's very subtly telling us flag colors.
Right.
Any other comments?
Very good.
It's just an extremely elegant painting.
Yes.
Yes.
Of a very elegant, self-assured, as Adele was saying, strong man.
Yeah. Claudia, is there any significance to the bust that's behind him?
I was hoping someone would say that. And you know what? I did not pay any attention to that until we were talking. So if anyone wants to Google that and let us know before we leave, that would be super.
Is that his name right now?
Huh?
Is that the the name on the bust that we can read says Reynal.
Yes, it does.
Would that be the person who the
Oh,
bust
let's
is
look it
of?
up.
We're going to research that one.
Good, good. We're all
We'll let you
detectives
know.
today. Absolutely. Anything else?
If you Google bust of Reynal, this portrait comes up.
Thank you.
It's interesting.
I think he's turning his back to the white man.
Well, he is doing that, isn't he? So did you find out who Reynal is?
Haven't, oh, wait a minute. He's an
William Thomas Reynal, a
Abbé.
French writer and man of letters during the Age of the Enlightenment.
Yeah, he's a famous,
Thank you, Charlotte.
he's an abolitionist, Abbé Guillaume Thomas Reynal.
Oh, there we go. Okay, that's more pertinent. Okay, so he's an abolitionist.
Yeah.
Okay, good information. Anything
Claudia,
else?
I have a comment.
Yes. Hi, Karl.
Hi, how are you?
Good to see you.
Same here. Thank you for doing this. My comment is, depending on who commissioned the piece, be it the actual person in the portrait, like we're seeing here, or whether someone else commissioned the artist to paint that person, I wonder how much influence the commissioner had in terms of style and in terms of what's portrayed. Like Joe made a comment, regarding the genital area. And we were just talking about the statue in the back, the sculpture in the back, and I see it as the person in the portrait, if he commissioned it, was trying to say he's as intellectual as anyone else walking the planet. I don't see him as, maybe it's turning his back on the white man, but it also has a lot to do with intelligence and how much intellectual power the person in the portrait has. He also has sexual power. He has, he's looking up towards the heavens as if there's a spiritual power that's guiding him. And I wonder if it's all the artists that decided on these factors, or I think it's more of the person who commissioned the piece working along with the artist. And I think the artist probably had to do a lot of satisfying regarding how the person is perceived.
Interesting point. And now that we know that Reynal was an abolitionist, then we have to walk away from the idea, which was interesting. It made sense that the gentleman has his back to him. That wouldn't fit anymore. Because if he's an abolitionist, obviously, Bailey would be in support of him.
And he is leaning on the statue too. He's
yes, he is.
Statue.
Yes, he is.
And I don't think it's a disrespectful lean as opposed to a support type.
Exactly.
Intellectual leaning.
Right, like colleagues.
Or mentors.
Yeah. Very good point. Very good. Anything else from anybody?
I just love the pedestal and the way the colors in the pedestal complement the colors in the figure.
Exactly. Beautifully painted also. That's not an easy thing to do.
Beautifully painted.
Claudia, the eyes interest me because the gentleman leaning on the statue, his eyes are looking, you can just see basically the white, it looks like his eyes are looking up, and the statue doesn't really have any eyes. I mean, they're there, but they're blank.
Well, if I look very closely, it looks as though the statue is actually looking at him. If you really look at it really, really closely, you can see like
the yes, I
line
can.
of the eyes. Yes. And he is side glancing at Bailey.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, yes. I just.
Hi, Barbara. Good to see you.
Yes. But what's so fascinating about this moment, I'm just thinking about looking at art, the way we might study literary criticism. it is making a statement, and we are interpreting that statement according to our own situation, and it's wonderful. So it seems to me to be an example of a painting that will, well, when we talk about the life of a painting, it's just endless, because we will look at it and interpret it. It's just the kind of statement, I think, that the kind of painting that's making a social statement.
I agree with you, Barbara. And I think also that as we interpret it, we have to remember that we're in 2021.
Yes, yes.
And not in the period in which the painting
Yes. So
grew.
perhaps we'll really never know.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. We can try, but we'll never know.
Yeah. Perhaps if we find biographies or memoirs, but all we can do is guess at what the artist had in mind, or the person who commissioned it.
Exactly. But how wonderful that this painting is still dynamic and worthy enough for us to want to interpret it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, Barbara.
And so it was painted by a woman named Giraudet, n'est-ce pas?
It was painted by a woman named Giraudet
Oui.
dash Triozon.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Any more comments on this one? All right, let's move on to the next one. Oh, I love this one. Love it, love it, love it.
Ooh, wow.
Oh, it just makes me sad. It is
Colors.
so beautiful. This one was done by Jean-Léon Jérôme, and it was done as a study, and it's now in a private collection. Would that it were in my private collection. And he did it for a painting called For Sale, à vendre, For Sale, Slaves in Cairo. And this particular study, I mean, can you imagine those of us who are painters, doing a study that is this complete and this beautiful? This study did not end up in the painting. What ended up in the painting was the two figures, two slaves. One was white and the other was brown. And this is so typical of what really went on, because we know, as I was talking to you 2 weeks ago, the Ottoman Turks ran a slave empire, as it were. I mean, they made phenomenal amounts of money from it for several centuries. It ended about 1453 or so. And most of the slaves came from Northern Europe. They came from the Baltic area. So the fact that Jérôme put in a white slave with long hair and an African ancestor slave with her fit more of the truth, I guess, as he was conceiving it. It was painted about 1872. It's an oil on canvas. And as I was saying, it's in a private collection. But just gorgeous. Look at the underpainting in that skin. We do a lot of talking in Art 201 about skin color and what it really consists of, so that we don't say things like, they're black. Well, they're not black. What color are they really? And what is the color that's going on underneath? If you look at her ears, you see a touch of yellow in there. And if you look at her cheeks, you see that wonderful rosy red that you see also in her shoulders and in her neck. And again, the repetition of the yellow on her nostril. Just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Any comments on that one?
What is that around her neck?
Probably a slave chain.
Right.
Yeah.
Type of shackle.
Mm.
Do you agree, Joe? Probably a,
Yeah.
yeah.
No doubt. But that's the beautiful, ugly part of it. You know, it's
Yes.
almost this strong, circle around her neck of control. And
Yeah.
yet, her interior, you can tell, is totally free, but enslaved. It's crazy. It's a great painting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the way that it's also, it's metallic for one thing, and it's a cold color compared to all the other warm colors in the painting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. We barely see her eyes. And of course, the eyes are the clue to your thoughts, your soul.
Yeah.
So she is hiding that from us.
Yeah.
The light thing there is her ear.
I think she's actually unavailable.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. I mean,
Yeah,
that's how
I would agree.
Yeah.
Somehow she's got flowers in her hair.
Yes. Well, probably to attract the buyer.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that he didn't play with her hair.
Mhm.
Didn't do anything with it.
Right.
It's the way her hair naturally is.
For me, what gives this thing such strength is the set of her jaw.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Good observation, Wayne. Any other comments on that one?
Yes, I do. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. And I think one of the important aspects of the piece is it's representative of the chiaroscuro style from the Renaissance, light and dark.
Yes.
And if I always taught my students to squint at pieces when they wanted to see the biggest breakup between lights and darks. And when you do squint at this piece, that highlight on the bar around her neck is one of the strongest highlights. And then you move up and see the highlight on the nostril.
Yeah.
And then your eye goes to the flowers. So there's kind of like a triangle there. That is a beautiful part of the composition. And there are parts of her skin as well as the metal that disappear into shadow, totally. Probably seeing the original piece, you might be able to pick up on it, but looking at it on the computer, I see parts that totally lost in shadow, such as her eyelashes and her eyes. And then you come out into this beautiful light where the nostril and the ears just kind of come toward you. And of course, the major focal area are the flowers, because it's the brightest, most brilliant part of the painting. So it's an extremely beautiful piece.
It certainly is. I want to take a moment to introduce to everybody and to thank them for being here, Karl Lopes and Joe Diggs, who are two of the artists in this wonderful exhibit, which I hope everyone has seen or will see, called Our Stories, which is at the Falmouth Arts Center just till the end of this week. Thank you, Karl and Joe, for coming.
Our pleasure.
Definitely.
Any other comments? By the way, Robin, who would have been here, she has to be in New York, is the fourth member of the artist in the show. Any other comments on this one? Okay, let's move on. We have just a few to go. Very proud. Look at the stance of this man.
I smiled when I saw that picture because he reminds me of so many people that I know, that whatever his ancestry is, that ancestry, I believe, also is in this country. Very familiar to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's called Portrait of an African Man, and it's by, now forgive my pronunciation here, but I'll give it a try, Jan Jansch Mostert, Mostaert, and it was painted somewhere between 1525 and 1530. And it's possibly of a gentleman called Christophe, oh, this is French here, Lemore, okay, or Christopher the Moor. And he was the black archer, this is what I learned, at the court of the Emperor Charles V. Don't ask me which country. And it's at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. It's an oil on oak, of all things.
Wow.
And it's small. It's 8 inches by 12 inches.
The focus was definitely on the face in this painting.
Absolutely.
The rest of it is not only, is there not a lot of great detail, but look at how small the hand is.
I was going to point that out.
Paying much attention at all. The face meant everything.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting for those in the group who are in my art class, our 201, we just finished a unit on hands. And the first thing that hit me too, Wayne, was how small those hands were in proportion to the rest of the figure. But he didn't care. It wasn't about the hands. It was about, as Wayne just pointed out, it was about the face and the caricature, the holding of that neck. Okay, we have one more. Oh, we have two more, excuse me. Okay, so this one is interesting because I learned something that I didn't know. And of course, there's a lot that I don't know, I won't pretend. But this was one thing I was not aware of. It's a painting of a Turk. And I came across quite a few paintings of Turks. And then I did some research and I discovered that there were a lot of people in Turkey who came from the African continent, from Zanzibar, Niger, Arabia, Libya, Kenya, and the Sudan. And they settled in the Ottoman Empire. And in fact, the Turkish army had, and even in World War II still had, thousands of African soldiers in its ranks. This is a French portrait. I don't know how those two things happen, but it's a pastel, and the artist is unknown. Again, a very handsome, self-assured gentleman.
The grain we're looking at is the paper?
The grain, are you talking about the crisscross?
Yeah.
The crisscross is because I photographed it off of the screen on my computer.
Ah.
Yeah, okay. Good eyes. Any other comments? Okay, let's look at the last one. The last one comes with two paintings, so we'll look at it at the gentleman first. Okay, interesting story here. This is, we're looking at 1600s approximately, and his name, does anyone know his name?
Juan De Pareia.
Exactly, exactly. Did you say it because you saw it?
No, I know the painting.
Okay, very good. You know who painted it?
Yeah, Velázquez.
Excellent. Okay. Do you know the story of Juan de Pareia?
I understood that he was an assistant painter in his studio. That's my understanding, but not much more than that.
Okay, very good. That is absolutely true. Juan de Pareia was born a slave He was a slave who was born in Spain. And he lived an awful, awful childhood. And eventually he, very young, became a member of the household of Velasquez, and his life began to turn around. And Velasquez realized how talented this young boy was, because he was still a boy at that time. And he took him on as his assistant and eventually freed him. So Pareia is famous for two paintings, which we can see right now if Laura would show them to us kindly. And they're both in the Prado Museum in Madrid. Okay, so this one, of course, is the Vocation of St. Matthew. And then the next one is the Flight into Egypt. Now, it's interesting, as I was looking at this particular painting this morning, I happened upon Osawa's painting of the same thing. Tanner's painting, Osawa Tanner's painting of the same subject. And it's interesting to watch what happens over the centuries. I have to say that I prefer Tanner's painting of it, but that's neither here nor there. So there we go. You have seen everything. We have put on our detective hats. You have been a wonderful, enlightening, fun group to spend an hour with. Any other comments? Hi, Sandy.
You have been the enlightening one.
Oh, you're too kind, too kind. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Terry.
Thank
Charlotte.
you.
Thank you so
Peter,
much.
Joe.
Yeah, can I suggest
Karl.
another painting for your group? When we were looking at the Jerome painting, it reminded me of a painting on the cover of Jericho Brown's poetry collection, The New Testament. I'm going to hold it up to the screen and show you if you can see the photograph of it.
Oh, my.
Okay, we all know how to do an enlargement, right?
Yeah. It's
Oh, dear.
the painting is by Leon Bonnat. It's called Le Barbiere Negre à Suez, the Black Barber of Suez. It's not dated, but I guess late 1800s, mid 1800s. It is of the same kind of chiaroscuro quality, dark, rich balance of lights and darks, very much like the Jerome painting. I'll email you a scan of it if you're interested.
And would you repeat the title, The Black Barber of, I didn't hear all of it.
Suez.
Thank you.
Would you repeat the title of that book? Is it poetry?
Yes, it's a poem,
Poetry.
Jericho Brown.
Is he an American poet?
Yes, he is. Here's a picture of him on the back.
And is that, well, it must be based on the New Testament.
No, it's the title of the poem. The poems are mixed.
Oh, I see. And that's just one of his poems.
Yes.
I see. Thank you.
Very, very strong painting. Thank you. Any more comments?
Claudia, was
Hi, Nancy.
most of those paintings were oil?
Most, but it's close.
You said some were gouache too, yeah.
One was, yeah.
But I would say most, yes. I would say yes to your question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This was wonderful. Thank you.
I want to give a big thank you to Claudia and a round of applause. That was
Back at you.
amazing.
Yes,
I was
Claudia.
on the edge of my seat the whole time. That was just completely fascinating. I appreciate everyone pitching in with the detective work, as Claudia put it. That was really fun. We might have to do more of these. That was pretty cool. So I hope you'll all come to the show. It is up for one more week. The last day is a week from today, Monday, March 1st. And so please come. We're open every day. We're free, open to the public. And, you know, usually you'll be the only one there. So that may not be the usual way you advertise things, but during the pandemic, people like that. So, so please come and see it. People are just blown away and appreciate the artists all for being here and continuing this discussion. And who knows, it was a really interesting model for how to look at art in a group discussion. So I was very intrigued by how this all went down. So thank you, Claudia, for conceiving of this whole thing. And thank you all for coming. And we hope to see you soon in person here at the Art Center or on Zoom. And we'll have another art reception, virtual reception in a couple weeks. So we'll hope you'll all come to that as well. So thank you again. Have a great night. It's supposed to warm up this week. So
good.
Thank
that
you.
is good news. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Everyone.
Bye now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you.